Hello, and welcome back to a video I said probably wouldn't happen, but it's happening now, we're doing it. It is no secret that I have an intense love of indie horror games, despite being a little baby back bitch about them. And this year, an entirely new set of games crawled into my lap whether I wanted it to or not, sat down, and made its home there, and that is the DreadX collections. So, what are the DreadX collections? At the beginning of 2020, a company called Dread XP was formed under the parent company of Dread Central. Now, Dread Central is an American-based website founded in 2006 and dedicated to horror news, interviews, and reviews. Their daughter site, Dread XP, was actually formed underneath them to focus on the gaming aspect of horror. And from that came the 3 DreadX collections, all coming out in 2020. So why are they called a collection? What are we talking about here? If you've never heard of the DreadX collections, they work a bit like a game jam, but the company is very adamant about maintaining that they are fully fleshed out games. These are not just haphazardly thrown together in 24 hours. These games were made with love, with professionalism, and they were meant to be a collaborative event, something that developers could do and be creative with and take some fun liberties and risks that they wouldn't otherwise do maybe on their own, because if their game tanks, well, that sucks. Here, the developers were being paid by Dread XP so that they could just do whatever the hell they wanted. They could collaborate together and boost each other up, and they came out with 3 whole collections like this. For full transparency, I did receive not just DreadX 2 for free, but I did also receive DreadX 1 for free, and even though I did make sure I paid for the 3rd one because they are very kind in giving away keys, I was gifted 5 other keys to give away during a charity stream, because that's just the kind of company that DreadXP is. They're very nice to their community, which is great. But that being said, there is a little bit of bias here, considering that I did receive some of these for free and that I am loosely affiliated with the Dread XP community. So I'm going to try to make sure I'm not the most biased, but I do recognize that that would get in the way of me saying anything negative about these collections. So what is it about these games that inspired me to make an entire video that took me many months to actually find the motivation to film? Well, to spare you a potentially hour-long video that I would want to edit in the first place, what I'm going to do is discuss briefly what I think each of the collections had to offer as a whole, and then I'm going to narrow it down to my top 10 must-play games from all 3 of the collections. So, without much further ado, let's get into it.
The first DreadX collection was made by 10 developers in a theoretical 7 days under the theme of PT, which is a reference to Hideo Kojima's playable teaser for the proposed Silent Hill game that never came to fruition. It starts out with a neat intro that reminds me of classic 90s horror films. It's dramatic and mysterious, and I actually really enjoyed the setup of it all. That being said, the overworld is basically just a means to the games in this collection. There are some optional notes on this table that may or may not add a little extra context to the games themselves and leave the player wondering what they're all about. But there's not too much to interact with otherwise. The focus is entirely on the games, and that was totally fine. I don't really have a lot of beef with this collection as a whole. The second DreadX collection was made by 12 devs in a theoretical 10 days under the theme of lovecrafting. This is where Dread XP turned the world building up to 10. And by that I mean they built an actual world. It was a game to hold the games, and it was so well done. You explore this creepy mansion and solve puzzles to access keys, which then allow you to unlock each game. Players can choose the games they want to unlock in whatever order they choose. You can even go through the house and find all of the keys first, and then play the games. Most of the puzzles were pretty simple, and they kind of satisfied that part in my brain that likes to search for things and earn my prizes. I really love this aspect of it. Now, I can recognize my potential bias here because this collection was my first exposure to Dread XP ever, and I was thrilled with the entire collaborative concept. But I think this was the most well put together of the 3 collections. The atmosphere was creepy, and it had me wondering the entire time if something was lurking behind me. The puzzles were fun and had me exploring every inch of the environment. And maybe this is negligible, but I love these PS1 graphics. Absolutely peak horror environment in my eyes. Overall, I think that the overworld of this collection was by far the coolest and the most immersive of the three. Alright, this brings us to the third one. And you know what? I think I judged this collection way too harshly the first time that I played. Let's get some background first. The third DookORTES collection came along October 23rd of 2020. Once again, it featured 12 developers all making games within 10 days under the theme of spoopy. You know, like cute spooky. And let me tell you, when I heard the theme announced, I was floored. Cute games that lull you into a false sense of security and then get really scary are some of my absolute favorite games to play.
Gosh, even the graveyard here is cute. I sure hope nothing spooky happens.
The overworld was designed by spoopy legend Kira, who created Spooky's Jump Scare Mansion, so I was already all in on this environment. You start off entering this adorable castle, and you get a little bit of backstory on the protagonist played by Leo Wiggins, that's him right there, hey Leo, and the totally not a ghost P that lives inside of Leo's head. Your goal is to solve puzzles throughout the castle in order to access these ritual candles, which unlock the games in the graveyard. The concept is super cute, and I loved all the details in the environment, but I will say it felt a bit empty in comparison to DookORTES 2. And that's not to say that these two games should be compared, but it's hard not to when you've got expectations from the second collection coming into the third. The puzzles in this one didn't give me that same satisfaction, considering quite a few of them just involved vacuuming some cobwebs off the candles to access them. The thing that really started to grind my gears was how much exposition was involved. For some context here, I play most of these games on stream where I'm already pretty distracted. Add that in with a healthy dose of adult ADHD, and I just do not have the patience for walls of text. Playing it again on my own, where it was a bit easier to focus, I didn't seem to mind it as much, but my opinion still stands that it is a bit wordy. But even with all that considered, I can say with full confidence that DookORTES 3 was the strongest collection out of all three. While DookORTES 2 was, in my mind, the most well put together in terms of the overworld, hands down, DookORTES 3 was the strongest. While I don't think that all of them were my type of game, none of them stuck out as being particularly weak. They all had fun aspects, and a few of them even had a nice replayability factor, which I don't think many games in previous collections brought to the table. I think all of the collections are worth having, but definitely pick up the third one if you have to choose. Okay. Let's get into the fun stuff, my top 10 games from all three collections. I should preface this with my horror gaming preferences because while not every game was for me, it doesn't necessarily mean that the game wasn't good. I am a retro RPG maker, PlayStation graphics, narrative-driven horror lover. I like getting chills, heebie-jeebies, and the occasional jump scare. So for me, there were a few that just didn't capture my attention. For example, Wither Studios, who made Amir, a game that I loved, brought an interesting combat-focused game in the second collection called Touched by an Outer God. I think that it was well done, but it just wasn't for me. Also, I cannot stress this enough, these were all made on an insanely short timeline, so I don't think there's a lot of criticism that I can throw around for the games themselves. I just want to highlight the ones that made it worth investing my time into. So, here we go. Bubbo was one of those games I was anticipating just from seeing the DookORTES 3 trailer. It had exactly what I expected out of the theme spoopy. Give me something sicky, sweet, cutesy, and then make it scary. You play as Bubbo, a tiny, ice cream man, maybe? He's adorable, whatever he is. You land in this cutesy little town full of smiling animal friends, so you know that you're immediately in for a bad time. These dumbasses immediately break your shit and make you run errands for them to get your propeller back. It's a really fun little platformer that slowly descends into madness, as expected. I didn't have a particularly emotional connection to this one or anything, but it was really well made and I had a ton of fun playing it. And sometimes that's all you need, man. Okay. I'm gonna need you to stick with me for this one, please. This game wasn't scary. And that's really the reason it's number 9 instead of number 1, because oh my god, look at this game! Look at the colors! Look at my new demon child! You can fucking pet them! And now we're racing, Jesus Christ! You raise monsters birthed from the sky hole and race them against other monsters, and you feed your shitty monsters to the favorite monsters to make them stronger, and it's just a good time. That's it. In all seriousness, this game gave me a sense of joy that I cannot explain to you. I don't know how it ended up in this collection, and I'm not gonna question it. I just loved it. It was colorful, it was nostalgic, it felt like home, and it was just fun to play. Look at my mouth monster. Look at her go. And she's dead last. Well, we don't raise losers here. Enjoy the incinerator. Let that be a reminder to you. Do you like wizards? Do you like ancient blood rituals? Do you like hands? Then this is the game for you. You play as an ultra cool wizard cult member that must find a way into the master's tomb. Unfortunately, you don't know enough spells for such a task, so you have to traverse this foggy landscape through graveyards and tombs to learn all sorts of neat spell combos. Thankfully, you've got your handy grimoire on you to keep track of the spells as you go. It even features Torple's very own hands. I am a sucker for stylized games, and this one really appealed to me from that aspect. Hand of Doom was, hands down, the most experimental and unique feeling game out of the first collection. There's a reason that Torple is the only developer they've asked to submit a game for every collection to date. His game for Dread X3, Chips Tips, is a fabulously strange Blue's Clues experience that you can't help but love. And by the way, you can pet the dog in Chips Tips. But Hand of Doom remains my favorite so far just by the sheer retro nostalgia it brings me. Was it the scariest game in the collections? Nah, but it was fucking fun. I really gotta hand it to him. Okay, I'm done. I swear, I'm done.
End of the world. Who saw it coming?
2 words. Shotgun, axe. Can you think of a more badass, nonsensical weapon to use when the world is about to be destroyed? To the End of Days was a pleasant surprise. For some reason, I skipped over this game in my initial playthrough of the Dread X collection because it's a first-person shooter and I typically don't enjoy that. Plus, my first exposure to the Scythe dev team was Canthairg in the first collection, which was not my favorite.
Oh my god, I'm actually getting tilted at a game that I'm not supposed to get tilted at! Not good.
To the End of Days was great though. You start off all piss and vinegar, ready to get yourself home before the destruction of the world. It's an action movie doomsday shooter with a badass narrator and a great soundtrack. It's got creepy alien vibes, and I was startled on more than one occasion. There's really not much to hate about this game, even if you aren't into first-person shooters. It was a standout game in the Dread X collection too. Oh boy, I'm not gonna sit here and pretend like I beat this game. This game is scary, and it has absolutely no intention of holding your hand. You wake up in a house that doesn't seem to be your own. There are plenty of things to open and interact with, but the real terror sets in when the blood on the walls tells you to press the button behind the toaster, which is something you never want to wake up to, by the way. Now suddenly there's a timer counting down to what you can only assume will be your death. Suddenly you're running around the house, grabbing keys and tools and frantically looking for whatever the game wants you to do. I couldn't even really spoil these puzzles for you if I wanted to. You will die playing this a few times. And as soon as you start over, the keys and the tools are all in different locations, unless you're playing on easy mode. It's a really neat idea for a short horror game like this, and even though I am a baby and couldn't finish it without easy mode enabled, I can recognize that it is one of the standout games from this collection. It was true to the theme of PT, it was well made, and the ending was such a satisfying mix of creepy and surreal. I think most players were incredibly impressed with Outsiders. Charlotte's Exile was really fucking cool. Made by one of the endless Szymanski brothers, what are there, like 10 of them now? It came with exactly the quality I would expect. The main puzzle involves decoding a note on the table in order to solve the mystery of your missing wife, who was studying some weird eldritch shit. But of course there's something lurking in the darkness. This one made me jump, and I usually hate that sort of thing. Something about frantically flipping pages and working to decode something while avoiding a very shy eyeball monster was strangely fun and rewarding. Although I didn't even realize until recording the game footage that the monster doesn't actually kill you, it just steals one of your puzzles, and that prevents you from getting the good ending. This game was so polished, so fun, and really true to the whole theme of Lovecrafting. You know that little voice in the back of your mind that says, hey, what do you think it would be like to date a horrifying eldritch goddess? Well, look no further, because this game gives you the full experience. No matter what kind of gamer you are, Sucker for Love is a slam dunk. It's cute, it's funny, and it's actually scary. I'm not kidding you. This game is full of personality with a heaping side dish of freaky. This was one from DreadX 2 that I never wanted to end. And thankfully, Akabaka and DreadXP heard everyone loud and clear on this one and will be publishing a full version of Sucker for Love sometime in 2021. The minute that I loaded into Shatter, I knew I loved it. It was the mix of the PSX graphics and the post-apocalyptic atmosphere that immediately had me hooked. This game really nailed the PT theme of this collection, not only as being a playable teaser that left me wanting more, but also just by being very Silent Hill-esque. You start off in future Britain in a world controlled by new gods, though you can't see them right off the bat. After getting the proper modifications, you can finally see just what kind of hell you're living in. It turns out these invertebrate gods need your help, and you accept a quest to retrieve one of their own. This game even has a cool little side quest you can do if you're looking to make the end a bit less stressful for yourself. I remember saying, I want a full game of this, and DreadXP is currently making good on that. During the DreadXP showcase a few months back, a brief trailer was released for Dread Delusion, a fully fleshed out open world RPG by lovely Hellplace. It's a long way off, but I am beyond excited for this game. So, you know, no pressure, guys. Disparity of the Dead is something I could play over and over again and still love it. I initially played this game on stream as one of the last ones in the collection. And admittedly, I was cranky and I was rushing because I was so tired and I wanted to be done. So I played for like 10 minutes and then I closed it out. And honestly, I'm glad that I did, because when I came back and played it off stream, it gave me a completely different experience. You play as a detective in the land of the dead. Not quite hell, more like purgatory. But even for purgatory, things are strange here. People who have died are reportedly not showing up in the afterlife, and it's your job to figure out why. You have to collect evidence and enough souls to get yourself to the living world and discover the haunting truth. This game is one of those best played quietly by yourself to really feel it, you know? I'm already biased because I love 3D platformers and I love these graphics, but everything about this pulled me in. The premise and the story were intriguing, collecting souls was satisfying, the detective minigame was simple and fun, and the ending was downright creepy. Bryce, I am begging you to make this into a full game. I would play this for hours. But until then, I will just keep playing it over and over again. It really is that good. Ooh, baby, there's a reason this one is number 1. This game is by far the most incredible out of the 3rd collection. It was all of the spooky, scary, what the fuck is happening that I could ever want out of a short horror game. Any game that can make me do this?
Can I close it? Can I open this one? Oh my god! Stop! Fuck off! Fuck off!
Is a winner in my book. This game is scary in the way that I felt like I needed to take a break 10 minutes in, but also so fun that I had to keep going. I know this is technically a review of sorts, and I should be talking about how this game plays, but I don't want to spoil anything for anyone who hasn't played or watched a Let's Play of this. It is something that needs to be experienced as a whole. Corpsepile was nice enough to answer some of my questions, and surprisingly enough, he wasn't always into programming horror. I say it's surprising because he has such a solid grasp on making something scary. Or maybe it's just really specific to my taste, who knows? He started making games about 4 years ago, and his first game was actually a satirical game about networking events in the business world, which explains a lot of the humor that comes out in submission. He liked horror games though, so he took a shot and seemed to hit the mark. He explained he was heavily inspired by subversive horror experiences, naming Metal Gear Solid and Nier Automata as examples. The creepiest things occur when you've already got your expectations on what you're experiencing. I actually realized very recently that my first experience with Corpsepile's work was watching a playthrough of Open House, which is a pleasantly creepy and weird acid trip of a game that hit all the right buttons for me as well. Either way, huge shout out to him for being nice enough to let me pester him and for just making creepy games. If you're going to buy any of the collections for any of these games, buy DreadX 3 and experience submission. And of course, you can go follow him and any of these devs on Twitter, on Itch, on Steam. They're everywhere. Feel free to look them up, give them love, give them support. Indie developers do not have enough of that, so go check them out.
All right, this is Editor Breesby now, and I am finishing out the video for previous Breesby who recorded the intro because I started editing the outro, and God, I just was so exhausted. Like I looked like I was losing it. So yes, thank you for watching this video. I really appreciate it. A huge shout out to DreadXP. I think they have done an amazing job building such a welcoming community in the past year, and it's really nice to see them succeed. The reason that I was trying to get this video out on such a short deadline was because their new game, DreadX Collection The Hunt, is coming out. It is all games that are considered shooters, which are not my usual types of games, but they were kind enough to let me play test for this collection, and I cannot thank them enough. And I was super impressed with even the unfinished versions of these games that I was playing. So I'm excited. That comes out Tuesday, April 13th, and I'm super excited to play it. I'm really excited for everyone else to play it, and I just love indie horror games, man. I'm so glad that this community and all of the other indie horror developers exist and that it has blown up the way that it has in the past decade. So thank you for making good games. Thank you for letting me play your games, and a huge shout out to my community for just dealing with me complaining and not streaming this week while I try to crank out a 20-something minute video. So much appreciated. Thank you for watching. I think this is the part where I'm supposed to tell you to smash that like button or subscribe. I don't give a shit. If you want to follow me on Twitch, you can, twitch.tv/Breesby. I'm there very inconsistently, but I'm there most of the time. And yeah, that is it. I will see you in the next one. Bye.